This is a video interview with Howard Richman, longtime Subud member, musician, entrepreneur, and all-around good guy. Howard, can you start by saying how you found and came into Subud?
Hi, Rahman. I have maybe my story is a little bit unusual. I grew up in Subud because my parents were open in Subud. I was born April 30th, 1958, and my parents were open in 1959 on April 30th, which is a crazy coincidence. So when I was 1 year old, they they were open in Subud, um, in New York. And eventually, after a few years, they moved. We all of us moved to LA, and because I grew up in Subud, it just for me it felt really natural that I really was interested in being open, and I started doing Ramadan fasting when I was 12. Even though we're Jewish, I understood the spiritual benefit of this at an early age, and I found it to be empowering. I was really proud of myself, and I didn't do the sleep fast, but my dad would wake me up at 3:30 or something in the morning, and we'd have the a sour, and then um, I would go back to sleep. So it was a little bit weird for some of my schoolmates because I was not eating or drinking. So, but I did Ramadan for many years. I haven't done it uh, for several years recently, but I felt that it really was a wonderful experience for me. So I had that as a background. And then in 1972, when I was 13, Bapak came to visit us and wanted to come to our house. So um, my mom came and it was emergency and she took the kids out of school and it was all kind of like, what's going on? What's going on? Bapak is coming, Bapak is coming. So the entourage arrived and Bapak came and I had been starting to take the piano pretty seriously and I started when I was 5. So I was practicing 2 or 3 hours a day. So Bapak wanted to hear me play, which I thought was kind of an honor. So I played piano for Bapak, and my dad wanted to show Bapak the gophers because we had a lot of gophers eating the plants in the backyard. And my dad, I don't know why my dad would explain this to Bapak, but he told Bapak about the gophers. So Bapak wanted to go outside and see if he could see the gophers. I don't know if any of them like popped out for Bapak. I don't know about that, but I remember that. And we also had an embarrassing moment where Bapak, um, we have a sliding glass door, right, to go outside. So Bapak walked right into the glass, and we all felt so embarrassed that could have happened. It was just the worst thing that could have possibly happened. He crashed into the glass door. And after that, my dad put a little sticker on the door so no one would crash into it anymore. But I guess, we always think of somebody like Bapak as being so spiritually connected, but he was also human, and I know that he wore glasses, so maybe he didn't know that there was a glass door there. Uh, so I remember that experience. Anyway, when he was leaving, he said that Howard could be open if it didn't interfere with his schoolwork. And I was only going to be 14 in a few days. It was going to be April 30th, my birthday. I would be 14. And I wasn't open on my birthday because we couldn't organize the helpers, but I was opened on May 3rd, 1972. And it was very unusual because, of course, as you know, most people are not open in Subud until they're 18. So I felt kind of proud that Bapak said that I could be open, but I also felt awkward because, people thought I was just a little kid and all that. And it's hard to fit in. So that part of it is pretty unusual also. I had but meanwhile, I was very serious about doing latihan. Twice a week, I would go down with my parents, and I found it to be helpful. And by the time I was done with high school in 1975 or 74, I was going to go to college and be a piano major. And I received a scholarship to Cal State Northridge to study with Jakob Gimpel, who was world-renowned pianist. And it seemed like, well, that was the right thing to do. But I'm telling this story because it's kind of related to Subud and the power of the latihan and the power of the inner guidance. That we had recently gone to a concert where this pianist named Mark Richman, who is not related to me, played Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto with the San Fernando Valley Symphony Orchestra, and we loved him, and we went down to meet him after the concert. Who do you study with? And he says, I study with Abid Serko. Serko was the head of the piano faculty at UCLA. And so we had a little bit of decision to make, because should I go for the scholarship or should I go for Serko, since we saw how amazing his student was. So my dad said, well, why don't we test about it? So my dad and I went into his den, and we both received really bad for Jakob Gimpel and really good for Abid Serko. Now, Serko was not an easy person. He was kind of a tyrant, where he would really try to beat you down, So anybody who studied with him has a badge of courage because they know that they survived. But what I learned from him was just magnificent. There's basically two schools of piano training: the German school and the Russian school. So I'm going to illustrate really quick the difference. The Russian school is all about gravity and relaxation. And the German school is all about hand placement. So you get your hand ready on a group. The Russian school is one by one with gravity circle. So prior to studying with Serko, I studied with Stephen Gordon, and he taught me the Russian training. So I feel very grateful that I have this heritage of the Russian training and the German training. Most people have one or the other, because the German training allows you to play very fast. It allows you to really position your hands and think in groups of notes, whereas the Russian training is known for beautiful tone. So it's nice to have an awareness of both. And I did a little bit of research. This is my long way of saying that the testing worked out really well, because even though Serko was a tyrant, and a lot of people had nervous breakdowns from studying with him, but I feel that the inner guidance was so strong that I had to have that training. And afterwards, I did a bit of research, and I want to show you something. I'm going to see if I can share the screen. I got to get something going here. Okay. Okay. I made a genealogy chart of my piano teachers, kind of like, who you were born from, but it's my piano teachers. And I'm going to share the screen, and you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. So here's me on the bottom, and I had 8 teachers, including the one I'm talking about, Serko, who studied with Schnabel, who studied with Leschetizky, who studied with Czerny, who studied with Beethoven. So unwittingly, I got into a really amazing lineage because of the Subud testing. And meanwhile, previously, I had studied with Stephen Gordon, who studied with Tarnowski, who happened to have taught Vladimir Horowitz for 10 years, who studied with Liszt, Russian school, who studied with Czerny, who studied with Beethoven. So I don't take it lightly because what I understand that your spirituality kind of affects your outer reality. And I know that growing up in Subud and allowing that to be part of my life has really helped me and helped guide my life. That's just one example that I thought might be interesting.
Yeah.
Um, in the 1980s, I became a helper and I was very active, maybe for about 15 years. And then I just got super busy and I had to stop. So I'm an inactive helper. But I have a couple of other examples of how I feel the latihan has been helpful in my life. When I teach piano, I have about 35 students, and when I teach, of course, I'm highly trained and I know a lot with my mind, but one of the things that I'm kind of good at is diagnosing, and I see a student who has a particular problem, and I'm able to immediately tune in and know what the solution might be. Um, Whether it's a technical issue or sometimes it's an emotional issue. Sometimes I can find out with the student if there's some kind of old trauma that the person is having that's causing them to have performance anxiety. There's so many little aspects of it, and I feel that I don't try to use the latihan, but I'm just saying it's just part of my life, part of my work, and I get this like little messages. And as a matter of fact, sometimes I say to myself, "Wow, how did I think of that?" And I write stuff down. And in fact, I ended up writing a book on how to read notes because I was a very poor sight reader. Sight reading is what's called when you can just look at the notes and just play it. And I was very bad at that because I hated it when I was growing up, and my teacher babied me by writing in all the names of the notes on the sheet music. But it turned out that I kind of invented, or might I use the word received, an understanding of how to sight read. And so I wrote a book called Super Sight Reading Secrets. And this book is used at a lot of music universities now. And there's 45,000 books in print. And then I eventually converted it to an ebook. I'll share that. See if I can. Okay, this one. So this is Super Sight Reading Secrets. And I ended up writing this in 1984. and there's been several versions of it. Now it's an ebook. Stop sharing. Okay. So I do have this knack for creating something that hasn't been done before. Um, and one of the things that I do in that regard is I do sound portraits, which is kind of like a psychic reading of people at the piano. So I tune into a person and I create a rendering of what I pick up at the piano. And generally, the way it evolved, it turns out that there's a transitional phase to this process called entrainment. So I might pick up some of the blocks or the negativity of the person, and then gradually in the music, that transitions into something calmer and more joyful. And then as the person listens to it, they feel something resolved or broken through in them. And those I call sound portraits. I've been doing that since 1982, and I think I've done about 3,000 of those so far, sound portraits. Many Subud members have seen me do it at various events. I do have a short little example of something where I did one at a gathering at Manuka with Rosanna Shetty, and I'm going to take the liberty of sharing that right now. And see if I can get that. So you get an example. So I'm gonna start and stop. It goes through a jumpy period, and then it goes into a calm period. Okay, so I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. Okay, hold on. Let's see, stop sharing. Okay, so you kind of get an idea of how that works, and that is definitely because of the latihan. How that started was in 1982, there was a Subud member in LA named Halima Jacobs who was kind of what I would, for me, she was kind of like a spiritual mentor. I love talking with her, and she just came out and said one day, "Oh, you can do music for people." And I didn't know what she taught. What do you mean? And she said, "No, I mean, you really can do music for people." So she was my first sound portrait. And then Ozana Gooding was the second one. And then people started telling each other. And then I started doing more of them. So, but it started, it was inspired by Halima Jacobs. Uh, and I feel that my ability to take my training of, I have a master's degree in piano, and my intuitive ability, I was able to kind of merge them. And so over time, I started doing sound healing, and I do music for pain reduction, music for insomnia, music for weight loss, music for birth, several different things that I create music for. And That's my company, Sound Feelings. Sound Feelings.
Look, can
But
I
I
ask a
also
question?
compose non-healing music. I want to give you a taste of that. Hold on. Okay. Okay.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So when you do the sound healings, you said you've done quite a lot of them. Have you gotten any kind of reactions from people about how they have been affected by your music?
Yeah. Uh, all kinds of stuff. Now, it's similar to tuning into someone like a reading, but I'm not psychic in the normal sense. So people come up and say, "Well, what did you get? What did you get?" And I say, "Well, I didn't get. I'm just kind of the receiver, and you can interpret it the way you want." But one time I was doing it. Sometimes I would do it in a gathering, a group gathering, and I did this one lady that I had never met before, and I started playing something like this. Which is kind of like a Western, country Western-y thing. And so she comes up after and she goes, "Oh my God, I own 7 horses." And it really was great, very validating to think that I never met her before. She just came up on stage and I start playing this Western-y thing. So that was comforting because, my human side says, "Well, I don't know if I'm doing this right. What, how do I know if it's right?" But when you have a few validating things like that, then you know you're on the right track, right?
Yeah.
And there was another time where, because when people hear their music, they are going to have a reaction either physically or emotionally or spiritually. So one time I did a sound portrait for someone who had been in a bad car accident. And the music for that person reactivated their injury. So they had a very bad injury to their leg. And he said that he felt all kinds of electric shocks going through his leg when I played. So I thought, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I have a couple of photos that I thought I would enjoy sharing if I can figure out how to do this sharing thing. I think because I was open when I was young. I found a photo when I was just around that age with me and my dad, and I wanted to share that. Hold on here. So that's in our backyard. I was 13. That's my dad, Peter Mark Richman.
Can you say a little bit about your dad?
My dad, he passed away 3 years ago at the age of 93, I think, or 94. And he was known as an actor, but he also was a painter and a writer. So he was on 600 TV shows, Peter Mark Richman. And he did have a little bit of a typecast. He tended to play the bad guy, but the classy bad guy, like the FBI, deviant kind of person in a three-piece suit. Um, there was a couple of instances where he got to do comedy. He played Chrissy Snow's father, the Reverend, in a show called uh, uh, oh, what was it called?
Was it Three's Company?
Right, Three's Company.
Yeah.
Right, and that he was kind of iconic for that one. He did a lot of oil paintings and acrylic paintings, and near the last 15 years or so of his life, he did electronic art. So we haven't really touched his website, petermarkrich.com. It's still functioning. My mom is an actress. In fact, that's how my parents met, Helen Richman. My mom had the lead in a play in summer stock and in the early 1950s, and my dad was the newcomer, and they fell in love. So then they ended up touring all over the country doing various plays. And I'm the eldest of 5 children. So when Bapak came to our house, I got there's a photo of Bapak with my mom and there's a photo of Bapak with my dad. So I wanted to show those. I think it's pretty cool. See if I can figure this out. Okay. Okay. There's Bapak in our backyard with Peter Mark Richman, my dad. May of, well, it was April 72. The photo was developed in May. And I want to share the other one with my mom, Helen Richman. With Bapak. And I have a photo of my immediate family. I want to share that. Oh, I can't do that. How do I undo something? Okay, I'm sorry. Try again. All right. So my son Oliver is 24. He's on the left. He moved to New York. He is a singer-songwriter, and we were visiting him April 2024 in New York. And next to him is my daughter, who's 13, Danica. She's a dancer. And next to me is Cherie Valeray. That's my wife. She is a singer and an actress. And she's in Subud. Oh, another cool thing is Cherie and Danica went to the World Congress in Indonesia this summer. And Danica came home and she said, I'm interested in being open. So I thought that was really nice. But we have to wait a little bit for that. Um, do you have questions?
Yeah, did you have any other interactions with Bapak over the years?
Well, when I was a kid, I remember he came to Santa Monica, and I remember getting to meet him. Um, I did have a little bit of an interesting experience when Mastuti came. That was his last wife, and she came to visit LA, and she came to our house, and she wanted me to give her a piano lesson. And that night, I did have a little bit of an unusual experience, um, which I don't want to go into the details, but I just had the feeling like Mastudi talked to Bapak and Bapak gave me a zap or something like that. I don't know what it was, but something very unusual happened that night. And when you say, did I have any interaction with Bapak, that one comes to mind.
Any others?
And, well, I guess when I was doing Ramadan, it wasn't a Bapak thing per se that I'm aware of, but maybe it was. When I was doing Ramadan, there was a couple of times, I was older at that time. I guess I was about 27, and I was staying up, and I would go to bed at 4:30 or 5, and then I had a spiritual experience where I was kind of like floating above my body, and I was floating over this endless parchment. And I could see all these different letters, but they were not letters that I recognized. I could tell that there was some kind of language, and it was as if I was vacuuming up the parchment, but the parchment went on for miles and miles and miles. My, it was amazing. And so I don't know if that was a Bapak experience or if that was just because I was super tired or because I was given a gift from God or like a spiritual experience. I don't know. But as far as any more Bapak experiences, I am not conscious of them. But I do feel so grateful that I have the latihan and the gift of Subud in my life. And I am grateful to Bapak for that.
Mhm. Well, I don't think I have any more questions, but if you have anything else you'd like to add?
Um, no, I think I'm happy what we did so far. It's a great opportunity. Thank you for cataloging this. I think it's really cool what you're doing, Rahman.
Thank you.